Hello everyone. I thought I would come back onto YouTube today because unless you've been living under a rock from a football perspective, you will no doubt know that Crystal Palace, my side, are set to take on Manchester City in this Saturday's FA Cup final at Wembley. Pep Guardiola, Erling Haaland, the gold standard of English football in recent years, going up against Oliver Glasner and co. And I think the main reason for me wanting to come onto this YouTube video today to discuss it stems from the fact that our club has been in the media for the last week or so. I've done a fair few engagements myself. I've been on the Overlap, been on Talk Sport this morning. I'm going to be on the BBC tomorrow. I did a thing with Joe and Ashley Cole the other day. And this isn't me sort of grandstanding for you today. I'm not trying to bring those things up for any greater purpose to sort of further my own reputation. The reason for me bringing them up is that pretty much every conversation I've had, understandably, to be quite honest, has centred around the team, the tactics, our chances of getting the better of City on the day, and whether or not we can go on and win the game of football. And whilst, of course, that is of paramount importance to many a neutral and to the vast majority of the watching public when the game rolls around at 4:30pm on Saturday, I just wanted to take a few minutes today to sort of pick apart, I guess, the emotional side of this from a Crystal Palace fan's point of view. Because, you know, the Overlap fan debate that I was on is filmed up in Manchester, went up there, and you have these conversations with people and they talk to you about the chances of us winning the game, but trying to get across exactly what this would mean to our supporters is a very, very difficult thing. I've tried on my own podcast, Monday to Friday, for the last week or so, I guess, to sort of get to grips with it. But it's quite an emotional topic for me. You know, if I look through my life, the reason that I support Crystal Palace is my dad. As I said on the Overlap, he's 67. He is the main driving force behind my childhood self choosing to support Crystal Palace. I have passed that on to my little boy. My wife has now fully bought into the Crystal Palace roller coaster. The reason that my dad supports Crystal Palace is because of his dad before him. To give you a bit of an insight into me as an individual, I've lived in the same 1.5 2 mile square my whole life. I was born in one particular house. We moved to where my mum and dad live now, which was about a mile away. I then moved out in 2015, got a flat. I then moved down the road from that flat to the house that I live in now with my wife. And I feel deeply, deeply rooted in South London. And as part of that, Crystal Palace is such a huge thing. It runs through my days, my weeks, my months, my years. It gives my life structure. I love Crystal Palace Football Club with every fibre of my being. And I know plenty of football fans will say this about their team, and I'm not trying to diminish their own personal perspectives. But as I said to a few mates of mine, I sent them a voice note on a WhatsApp chat a week or so ago. The whole point of supporting Crystal Palace for me is that as a South Londoner, you have decided to shun the success that is easily obtainable on your doorstep with Chelsea. You've chosen to shun Arsenal. You've chosen to shun Spurs, Manchester United, Liverpool, City. Because let's be honest, London and South London, maybe even more specifically, there are a lot of people that are just minded to support the big six, the clubs that you can watch in the Champions League or in European football regularly, the ones that expect to compete for titles or at least be in that conversation at the start of every season. It's an easily done thing. And being a Palace fan in South London, through my childhood years and my adolescence, it was a measure in having a sense of resolve and spirit, because I think in my year in my high school, there were 3 or 4 Palace fans. You know, I say it a lot to people I go to football with and just general acquaintances. If you go to Goals on Five Ways, which is near Croydon by the flyover, in my childhood, you used to see 1 or 2 Palace shirts being worn on those five-a-side pitches. And now, if you walk past there or drive past there on any given day, you'll see 10 or 15. And that is a measure of how we as a club have progressed in the last 10 or 15 years, thanks to the ownership of CPFC 2010 and the 12-year/13-year stay that we've had in the top flight. But this potential trophy, this final that we have against Manchester City, the ability for us, if we win it, to finally have a piece of silverware in the cabinet, for us to be able to stand on that and say that's something we've achieved, because we've never won anything before. I know I probably sound like a broken record to many Palace fans listening to this, because they will have heard me say it and they will know it themselves deep down because we've been through it. But when you are a club who establish yourselves in the top flight over a decade, when you're a club that have reached two finals before in 1990 and 2016, you take the lead in both of those, you have it snatched away from you. When you're a club who've been in administration twice, of course, back in 2001, we had a scenario on the last day of the season. We stayed up against Stockport. Dougie Freedman scored a last-minute goal there. You go back to 2010, we overturned a 10-point deduction. We got a 2-2 draw on the last day of the season. Darren Ambrose scoring the all-important second the second goal in that game for us, which got us that 2-2 draw and kept us afloat in the Championship. All of these things, finishing third in 91 and not getting to go on a European tour because English clubs were banned because of the Heysel disaster, going down fourth bottom when the league changed from 22 teams to 20, they are stories and things that get wheeled out by Palace fans as character building moments. Even if you go back to the 2016 final, with Jason Puncheon putting us in front against Manchester United, we had that lead for 90 seconds? And I can genuinely and honestly, hand on heart, say that 90 seconds were the most surreal of my life. I genuinely felt as though I was floating, levitating, whatever you want to call it. I couldn't quite grasp the magnitude of this potential moment. Jason Puncheon, a local lad, coming off the bench to put us in front against the behemoth that was Manchester United when we were, 3 or 4 years into a Premier League stay, having come in 2010 from having 9 players on our first team books, having survived administration and pretty much building that squad from the ground up, beating all the odds to get into the Premier League in 2013, beating Brighton over 2 legs in the playoff semi-final that year, and then in the summer of 2016 or May of 2016 we had this opportunity to get our hands on our first piece of major silverware. We took the lead, we didn't manage to make it over the line, and it haunts me to this day. But as the conversations that I've had with my mates have unfolded over this last week or so, I think it is fair to say that this squad and this group have more potential in them than the 2016 squad. They have hunger, they have desire, they have a higher ceiling, they are younger, they are better coached, and overall they have this sense of steely belief that they can get the job done. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get it done, by the way. As I said at the very beginning of this video, Pep Guardiola, Manchester City, Erling Haaland, the whole cavalcade of stars that they can call upon for this final should, if they play to their full potential, mean that they get over the line. But again, when I was on the overlap earlier this week, the Manchester City fan there said it was going to be his 29th visit. 29 visits to Wembley. Now, that is a completely different stratosphere to what we are used to. We got there in 22 in the semi-final against Chelsea. Obviously, that didn't end up going to plan. We crashed out of that year's competition, and the less said about it, the better. But if you look towards our performance against Aston Villa in this year's semi-final, the comprehensive nature of that victory, the fact that we won by 3-0, we missed a penalty, we had a very, very good goal as far as I'm concerned, chalked off unfairly from Gianfranco Mateta. Tyreek Mitchell missed a sitter. We were incredible on that day. I would put it in the top 5 performances in Palace history over 90 minutes personally. Obviously, I haven't been there to see every single one of them, but I think you would struggle to find a more comprehensive win in a big game on a truly massive stage in the Wembley pitch. So I look at all of these things. I look at the coach that we've got in Oliver Glasner, and I look at the general sense of belief that the players have that has rubbed off on our supporters, and I think, why not us? And genuinely, having had all of these thoughts coursing through my mind over this last couple of weeks, I'm not suggesting it means more to us than any other set of fans. Obviously, that would be a ridiculous thing to say, because each and every person has their own individual views and reasons for supporting their club. But I do think that the opportunity for Crystal Palace fans who have, as I say, shunned that easy success that is obtainable on their doorstep, or even, choosing to support one of the Manchester sides or a Liverpool side, which many do. If you have stuck with your local team, if you support Palace because you believe in something local, if you believe in, representing your area, if you believe in following in the footsteps of your dad or your mum or your grandparents, then this is a day for you. It really, really is. I was having a conversation with one of my mates, and he said to me that in his formative years, in his childhood, Palace was the thing that he did with his grandfather. And his grandfather suffered with Parkinson's. He used to get into games with him, and his granddad would get sideways looks from people, or certain people would say things towards him, but it didn't deter him from going. And even when they couldn't get tickets, they used to go and walk around Selhurst Park for big games when the atmosphere was building, just to experience it, because he lived 2 or 3 minutes from the ground. And he said to me, my granddad won't be there with us on that particular day. I will be standing/sitting next to him in the ground, but he said that's the person that I'm thinking of, just to say we finally have done this, we finally have got over the line. And those stories will be, they'll be everywhere. Every single Palace fan has somebody that introduced them to this club, somebody that made them care so deeply. And if we can finally have that day in the sun, that trophy that we have craved for so long, it's impossible to put into words. The fact that there's a European tour to go with it, I don't care who we draw, whether we win any of the 8 games, whether we progress. Just the opportunity to go and watch Crystal Palace competitively in a European fixture away from home is a bucket list item. It is something that I have spoken about with my wife over and over again throughout the years. If we ever get to Europe, the savings are getting used, I am going. There is no question in my mind of it. And to be 90 minutes away from it, to have a team that has this potential, you look through the back three, Chris Richards, Mark Gay, Maxence Lacroix, all locked in, all performing superbly together. You've got Daniel Munoz on the right hand side, bombing on down that right, with Ismail Assar in tandem a bit in front of him. You've got Dean Henderson, who's been an absolute revelation since he came into the club in between the sticks. You've got Adam Wharton, probably going to be England's guaranteed starter in the centre of midfield for the rest of his career. Abir Eze in the best form he's ever been in Crystal Palace colours. John Philippe Mateta at the head of the side. These are good players. These are players that are hungry, that do genuinely believe that they can do this. And there are just so many narratives spinning off from it. Now, I'm not suggesting that narratives are the be all and end all, and we all know that, as I say, Manchester City have more than enough in the locker to get this job done across the 90 minutes, and if they do, we'll wipe our tears, we'll wipe ourselves down, and we'll go again the next year. But for the first time ever, as a Crystal Palace fan, I am going into a final genuinely believing that we could. I think someone said it to me in relation to the 16 final. We went into that as players and supporters alike thinking that we had a puncher's chance. And, ironically, through Jason Punjun, we managed to take the lead in that game. It was incredibly short-lived, and it still is a raw memory now 9 years on. But there is no reason for us to fear what waits for us at Wembley on Saturday. We can respect it, we can treat it accordingly, but we can also say that we are a team who can cause Manchester City problems, and I can't stop myself from daydreaming. I cannot explain to you what it will mean for me. I've said to my mates, if we are leading with 15, 20 minutes to go, there is a high chance that I will shed a tear at that point, just because of the magnitude of what it would mean should that final whistle come. And I just want to be able to experience it. I want to be able to hug my mates who I go with every week. I want to be able to stand there with my dad and say, we have done this. And the reason for doing this video is to try and get across the magnitude of the emotions, not just for me, but for every Crystal Palace fan going into this particular final. It will be like uncorking the biggest bottle of champagne you have ever seen as far as Crystal Palace fans are concerned. There are people I know who've been going since the 60s, the 70s. All they want to see is Crystal Palace win one trophy. We have never done it. I've said many times that alongside Fulham, I believe we are the 2 biggest clubs, and I appreciate that's a provocative statement to make, but the 2 biggest clubs in English football to have never lifted a trophy. And even with Fulham, they've had their European tour. Roy Hodgson got them all the way to the final way back when. for us to be able to get that trophy and have the European tour that goes with it is something that I would cherish for the rest of my days. And I know every Crystal Palace fan that I stand alongside at games or who I interact with on social media from day to day, we all feel the same, whether you're 5 or 55. It's a feeling that you can't explain until you belong. And that's really what I wanted to get across today. Hopefully I've done a decent job of it. Obviously I am not counting my chickens before they've hatched, and there is no part of me suggesting that we are going to get this done. But the fact that I have belief going into it is a foreign and very, very pleasing feeling, because I have total admiration for the way Oliver Glasner has built this squad and for the belief that they, as a collective of players, have in one another and in the overall project. So I will sign off on that particular thought. I just wanted to come on today and give that perspective. Hopefully you have a lovely day, have a lovely weekend, and ideally I will be coming back to you at the start of next week with another YouTube video, probably with tears in my eyes, if we've managed to get over the line and win it. Have a good one, and bye for now.